All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are sitting down with RTR Crypto. Thank you so much for joining us, RTR Crypto.
Hey, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So you're known in the blockchain industry as a DeFi expert. And today I kind of wanted to talk in a broad sense about why the world even needs DeFi. Of course, for those who don't know, DeFi is decentralized finance. It is a niche in a long lineages of niches post Bitcoin in the blockchain world. And DeFi, I think, is really kind of the underlying technology that has made technology such as NFTs or kind of pop phenomenon such as NFTs possible. And NFTs, in my opinion, are really, as far as name recognition is concerned, the largest thing that blockchain has produced since Bitcoin. And NFTs are made possible by, of course, decentralized finance. So I didn't want to get too far down into the technicals today, but I did want to talk about the global financial system and the role DeFi could play in it or alongside of it moving forward. So RTR, what is DeFi to you?
Hey, it's a really good question. It's a lot of things, to be honest. But in a broad scope, I would say that decentralized finance is bringing a financial capabilities to those who are unbanked and who have smaller or credit limits. They have a lack thereof of a credit history or a financial history. They have a small amount of assets, and it brings capability to people that would otherwise not have it. And it also it brings fairness to the financial industry because it pulls the power from centralized entities, the government, where they're taking advantage of the consumer and those who are banked and using their assets as a means to create wealth for themselves instead of allowing those who need it to create wealth for themselves and for their families and the generations that follow them. So it's really a broad scope of things.
I saw in a New York Times piece, one of the projects with which you're affiliated, FEG token, how people were talking about a mistrust in this financial system. Could you speak to that a little bit and your experience of the financial system generally, whether that be from an intellectual standpoint, researching it, or just your day-to-day experience, whichever one resonates the most with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give you a little background about myself. I'm 32 years old. I spent my professional career is in healthcare. I was working as in an emergency room. I have a bachelor's degree in nursing, and I'm a third year medical student currently. So I'm doing rotations online right now as for a radiology rotation actually. So I'm a student. I've been, for me, I have, let's say, $320,000 in student loan debt, right? And the interest rates on those are astronomical. And they do this because, the government, as soon as the government got into the student loan industry, they said that we'll give you this much money, and it just drove the price and the value of an education through the roof. And so that's just one sense of how it affected my life on a personal level. But if you're looking at how centralization of finance really manipulates and damages people, you can look at, credit cards having 20 some odd percent interest rates. You can look at personal loans, 18% interest rates, et cetera. You have these crazy rates. And you have to make all these different qualifications to get a loan, even a small amount. And what people end up doing is they end up going and getting ridiculous things like car title loans and these short-term loans that are you can never get yourself out of them. And so they end up burying themselves in even more debt, and they max out credit cards that they can't pay back because, right now our government, the way that it's set up, they've been shutting down the small business, putting limitations and restrictions because of the COVID pandemic in current times, and mask mandates and these restrictions that people are just not able to run a business or to create an income for themselves. Many people have been laid off. Many didn't qualify for funding. They didn't receive any assistance from the government. It took several months to even get a first stimulus check out to people. And then in my personal opinion, they have been dragging out the stimulus packages for quite a while, and it's de-incentivizing people to get back to work. And so they're just creating more and more of inflation with the US dollar, and essentially losing the power that it intrinsically holds as a world reserve currency, which I think is being challenged, at today's level, in today's market.
I've seen estimates, I believe, by the UN food arm, that approximately 20 million people starved as a result of essentially the lockdowns and the breakdown in supply chains last year. So it runs deep, even deeper than perhaps people here just not being able to run their businesses. And I think that a lot of individuals who aren't able to see that firsthand, it's as if it doesn't exist. So these strategies to minimize the impact of a virus, COVID-19, have done a lot of peripheral damage as well. Any other thoughts on the global financial system in general, and kind of your take on it, or also your experience of it?
Yeah, globally, I mean, I'm pretty well traveled, and I've been to several places, and I've lived in other countries, and I'll say that a lot of the restrictions, as you just mentioned, they played a large part in taking away the economy from places like, I'll use the Caribbean for an example, a place I lived for a couple of years. They highly thrive on a student demographic to come in for several months out of the year, as they live on the island and live in these buildings that the locals own, and eat the food that the locals provide, and the travelers that come to the island and things. So you're looking at a system, this pandemic, that's really driven a lot of that into the ground. And even currently, I'll give an example. They opened back up to schools, and then they reinitiated lockdowns as the pandemic kind of just blossomed back up again in that area. But I mean, when you're bringing thousands of people to one location from all over the world, that can happen. So it's really just been a hard balance in between these things. I'll also say that even being a student myself, I had a large amount of credit card debt, going through school, just having to pay things, and then trying to balance out finances was ridiculous. I tried to apply for different loans or different cards, but because I had not a lot of I wasn't working at that point, I had a difficulty. I got rejected getting a credit card for a couple $1,000s, and I had tens of thousands of dollars in cryptocurrency at the time, but they wouldn't recognize my cryptocurrency as an asset to provide any security for a traditional finance credit card. But also, when you travel, you see a lot of people that don't have the means to be banked. And so I think that when you look around the world and you see people in countries that are using their data minutes on their cell phones as a currency, you can see that there's a need for some sort of asset that can be traded back and forth between the people, so that they can have a means, like their own monetary system, or a monetary system that isn't built or dependent upon one central entity overseeing it and taking away what little means that they can muster up, between themselves. So I think that giving the financial system back to the people and running it on a trustless platform like decentralized finance is really the way to go. And I think it's challenging the traditional finance system. And I think that as we see more and more of these banks and institutions saying you can't buy crypto on your credit card, or you can't do this with your own money, it really shows you that they're kind of grabbing at straws now, reaching for straws, trying to maintain their positions, because they can see that we're looking at a market now that we can do different things. Like we can do lending, margin trading. I mean, you can have insurance. I mean, all these different things on a decentralized platform that doesn't need a middleman to charge all these ridiculous rates. It can be trustless, data driven from oracles, and the loan trading through smart contracts. I mean, this is the system and the movement in the direction we're going.
Wall Street, Occupy Wall Street was a large movement in my early 20s. And I thought what was notable about that movement is that it was focused on a clear-cut center of financial power at that time. whereas that movement certainly faded over time, I view Bitcoin and I guess the broader DeFi movement as a continuation of Occupy Wall Street. Do you share a similar view? Do you see these movements, if you will, as ideological kindred spirits?
Yeah, I think that a lot of people have been, damaged by the traditional finance system. I mean, if you look at, the housing market crash and how you have, you go into a restaurant, you see like an 85-year-old person, washing dishes. You're asking yourself, what did this guy get in? What did this guy do in his life that put him in this spot that he has to still be working like this? And it's because a lot of people were negatively impacted. We saw a huge market crash, and it was the greediness and the lack of regulation that led to a corrupt downfall of the United States housing market. And it really took millions, it took trillions of dollars just to vanish. It took trillions of dollars off the market that vanished, and millions of people were affected, and became homeless at that too. And it really wrecked our economy. And it just shows you that no matter what the entity is, greed is a human trait. And these people, the more they get of it, the more it tends to corrupt. Power and money, they tend to corrupt. And so you just want more, and you just want more, and you just want more. And so it never becomes enough. And so they do things that benefit them. And then they shake the hands of those that facilitate, that for them. And then in turn for the people that they're shaking hands with. And then you just create a society of people, this 1%ers, that just regulate and control everything that the consumer and the middle class are able to participate in. And so you suppress that middle class and you don't allow them to grow. And you look at you look at the education system. I can only speak from the United States standpoint, but I didn't leave high school understanding how to do taxes or what it meant to make money. And nobody ever said to me, hey, you don't have to go to college. You could be all these different things. You could think about opening a business. They don't structure you to think independently. They don't teach you to make investments, in a correct way. They tell you, hold the dollar. They say, save money, get out of debt, just save your dollars, save cash. That's going to make you rich. That's not going to make you anything, considering what we're seeing now, the printing and printing and printing of money. So if you can print something until the end of time, where's the value? How does the value stay held? Well, for the United States, that tends to be military strength and the petrodollar, and so that's how we maintain control. And it just seems like the times are changing, and it's people are recognizing that a store of value in precious metals, and even precious metals even are difficult because you're holding precious metals, but what are you going to do? You're going to hold 2,000 pounds of gold in your living room, and somebody's going to come and rob you for it, or you're just going to buy you're going to just trade in stock or with a trust and hold a little slip that says that when the time comes, I can come for this. Who's to say that you're guaranteed that? And so I personally, in the decentralized finance space, I keep everything off of centralized exchanges because it tends to be where they lock your stuff. They can lock you up. They can lock up your assets, and then they're not yours anymore, even though you've paid for them. You could take XRP as a prime example on Coinbase. I'm sure you're familiar with that. I'm sorry, I know I'm ranting on, but you can take XRP, for example, on Coinbase and say, SEC didn't even declare that they had done anything wrong, but because Coinbase was looking to IPO, they said, oh, we have to take this off. We have to lock trading. So you've got people now that bought XRP at 5 cents, 10 cents, 11, 15 cents. Then it's gone up to over $1 and change, and it's sitting at over $1, and they can't take a profit on it. Why? Because Coinbase has deemed it, they haven't even deemed it a security yet, but their literal Coinbase just locked it up. So you have to take your assets and hold them and have custody of them yourself. And so I think that it just shows, that's just one more example of how centralization is damaging to the user and to the consumer.
I recall the bailout, the $1 trillion bailout in 2008, October 2008. And looking back, I see that as the Normalization of the money printing that we've seen today and the bailouts today, where the global economy kind of gets shut down and then large corporations get bailed out, that perhaps that precedent perhaps was set in 2008, 2009, which made everything we've seen over the last year to 2 years possible. And of course, when we're talking about kind of the regulations that we've seen, the shutting down of businesses that we've seen, the major corporations who also received the bailout money were allowed to stay open simultaneously. So it makes you wonder who is being served. Of course, I'm curious, what's your experience? What's your experience of blockchain and DeFi? How did you discover it? Why did you discover it? What led you to it? And what were your original thoughts as you started exploring it? What were the ideas that were resonating with you at that time?
Yeah, so I started trading cryptocurrency several years ago, and I was the same as everybody else. I was doing like a lot of blue chip stuff. I was doing Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, XLM, Cardano, things of that nature. And I stayed heavily in that realm. And then I got exposed to decentralized finance going down the rabbit hole. And I found project that I'm affiliated with, Feed Every Gorilla, FEG. And I spoke to the team. And what was nice is that after this whole Wall Street bets fiasco, everything that was done there, which I supported. So I say fiasco, but it just saying, term of endearment. Uh, After that, there started to be a collaboration of people and unity in investment. So now you're taking things and you're looking at these projects, and now you have Telegram groups. I'll give you an example. Our Telegram group has 120,000 people, and we have 750,000 holders over that between the two blockchains that we're on. And so we have a huge community that speaks to each other, talk to each other. It's a community-driven project. Nobody owns it. It's decentralized completely. Ownership is renounced to the contracts, which is one of the things that I really appreciated about it, is that it's decentralized. And like I told you, I had friends that got locked up in the XRP thing with Coinbase and all these different their assets getting taken and held. And so when I started to look at decentralized exchanges where nobody could go in there and pull your money or lock you up, and even when you're trading, you maintain possession of your keys. It's trustless. That kind of thing incentivized me to move into this industry more and more. And as I saw that they had different things that you could do, borrowing and lending, like I mentioned earlier, margin trading, etc. I really thought that decentralized finance coupled with, stable coins, being able to, move money around back and forth as an exchange, a medium of value there, it could really do a lot of good. And I started to think about the use cases for it. And it was, how do you earn passive income in the decentralized finance space? Well, you utilize reward systems like liquidity pools or staking. We have an FRAP system that you can utilize for earn rewards as well. So there's a lot of ways to earn passive income with your money rather than just giving it to a bank and taking on a negative interest loan. So it really gives a lot of power back to the user and a lot of control. And I really enjoyed that. Also, we spoke to about people starving, and I think that this sense of community that decentralized finance has is so big. And I'll give you an example. We have been funding food drives in Mexico because one of our community members is from that region and asked about getting some funds together to do that. And so we've done that. We've done food drives out there. There are many DeFi projects that are created in order to for different charitable organizations, right? So you have Feast, for example, that feeds the homeless. So you have, and they run food drives. So there's literally projects in the decentralized finance space that can be built around the benefit of others. And the beauty of it is that it drives people to these because you can make a profit doing this, but you're also giving back. And I know that's kind of a double-edged sword. You could say, well, how does that make you a good person? Or, if you're making money off of doing this, but the outcome is still the same. Somebody's being fed because of what you're doing. And I think that that's a beautiful thing. There's more of a sense of community in decentralized finance because when you give the power back to people, people tend to do better for themselves, right? So they're in a better position themselves. And when they better themselves, they have no problem bettering the people around them. You lose that sense of dogfighting between each other, right? because you're not competing against each other to get a piece of the pie that, Big Brother has control over. You now have the pie, and now you can divide it amongst each other. And I think that is the sentiment that really drove me towards decentralized finance. And what I really love about it is that it's community based, it's community driven. We look out for each other, and it's a trustless environment because everything runs through smart contracts, and the cryptography, and it's on the blockchain. It's all public, so there's transparency, right? I don't know where my taxes go. I don't know where every dollar that I've paid in taxes over the past several years I've worked have gone, but I do know where everything on the blockchain goes because I can click a button and I can see it. And that, I think, is the beautiful thing of decentralized finance.
What do you think about DeFi and Bitcoin, or DeFi on Bitcoin?
Well, there's a lot to Bitcoin, and I'm not a Bitcoin expert by any means, but I will give you my opinion for sure. I know that a lot of people are definitely Bitcoin maxis, and they see Bitcoin as a large store of value. And I do see a lot of value for Bitcoin, and I would never, bash Bitcoin in the sense that it's obviously the father of all cryptocurrency. It's always going to be the big brother of that, from all the other projects that we have coming out. I do think that they saw a lot of issues with scalability and movement. And this is what brought about a lot of breaking off of Bitcoin and going into different platforms. We'll say like Ethereum, for example, where it's scalable. They've done a lot of work with smart contracts. You can build on top of it, and you can run all these different things. And even Ethereum, though, is having difficulty scaling. Their layer one is having difficulty scaling, and they're coming into problems with that right now. You mentioned the NFT market and how that's been booming, and that is 100% accurate. And that's congested up the Ethereum blockchain like crazy. We're seeing tremendous gas fees, sometimes $500, during the peak hours of the day, and it's because of that congestion. So I think that Bitcoin has been doing quite a bit. They've got different, side chain things that they're doing, other projects that they're trying to scale on. So you've got, the Rootstock and Sovereign, et cetera, and that are coming out, and they're helping the scalability, and they're bringing different functionality to Bitcoin, right? To that different functionalities that essentially run on the back end of Bitcoin, right? So they're safe because proof of work tends to be safe. They're utilizing nodes, they're utilizing mining, and so they're doing things like with Sovereign. You're looking at, they have exchange, margin trading, lending, yield farming, all these different things that you can do, these behaviors, and they run back to Bitcoin. So I think that people are definitely taking and building around the Bitcoin ecosystem now. And I think that because Bitcoin is so large, it's definitely going to maintain its presence as a store of value. We know that it's clunky, and it takes longer to do transactions. It's expensive, but that doesn't change the fact that it's very secure. It's decentralized. As a blockchain, it's decentralized. However, the mining for it tends to be very centrally located, and so you can look at it from one way or the other. I know it's also caught a little bit of tension from people saying that it's not green, even though the majority of the Bitcoin mining, it tends to be renewable energy. So it really, it really has been going up and down. But the adoption for Bitcoin is tremendous. I mean, you're looking at countries taking it on as their native currency. It's having to be recognized now by central monetary entities. And so it's definitely moving as a whole cryptocurrency. And I think that decentralized finance for Bitcoin, building out around and scaling around Bitcoin is going to be something that's going to be very utilized in the future. And I think it kind of goes into two different directions, right? Do you go into some sense of like hyper Bitcoinization where everything just kind of reverts back? Or do we tend to move into another realm where it's like everything is multi-chain and we bridge back and forth and we allow trading and expansion in these different blockchains, and we all kind of work together, instead of making just one token, the reserve token, like, the reserve currency in cryptocurrency. So I think there's a lot of talk, there's a lot of room to discuss these things. So I don't know, what's your take on that?
I think the jury is still out on DeFi on Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin is a symbol of financial independence, and that's why I rally around it. And I think that the entire cryptocurrency industry might rally around it. At least those who are proponents of financial independence, as well as um, free market economics in particular. There is not very much DeFi that has been built on Bitcoin. I guess you might be able to argue that Lightning is a form of DeFi on Bitcoin. However, I think that it's quite centralized too. So even then, that's a tenuous argument. But it is sort of this example of what can be done or how layer two on Bitcoin can be developed. And perhaps, whereas Eth2 say will have a lot of the DeFi features built with on this Eth2 protocol, it could be that Bitcoin is pegged to various layers on the Bitcoin protocol, and those layers are where the DeFi apps are built out with varying range of centralization to decentralization. Bitcoin developers argue that this is a feature and not a bug. They argue that such modularity will be technically more secure than the way in which DeFi is being built out on other smart contracting platforms, for example. Like I said, I don't know where this leads. I certainly have not precluded Bitcoin from partaking in a meaningful way in the DeFi development industry. I do believe also, though, that Bitcoin is today playing a significant role in DeFi, even on Ethereum, in the form of wrapped Bitcoin. So a significant percentage of the volume of DeFi apps is wrapped Bitcoin. That is Bitcoin that is locked in a contract and then redeployed as an ERC20 token, for example, on an Ethereum-based dApp. Do you have any opinions on wrapped Bitcoin?
I do. I think that, back to what you were saying about a lot of people understanding that Bitcoin has, been around for quite a while. I think that Ethereum is doing a tremendous amount of volume, and because it's decentralized, they tend to do, they were able to build out the smart contract platform that, Solidity that people are coding with, and they're able to expand and do all these different features on it. It's been largely adopted for decentralized finance. But I've also seen a lot of Binance Smart Chain being utilized for decentralized finance in the altcoin realm because of the minimized gas fees and the reduction in fees for even deploying NFTs, to go full circle on that. So the NFT market is huge in the Binance Smart Chain side because of the reduced fees it costs to deploy, to sell, for transactions, people to buy. So we're looking at kind of a movement away from just Ethereum as people are attempting to scale out on their own blockchains here. And it's an interesting direction. And I think that back to the Bitcoin being wrapped, people look at Bitcoin as a significant store of value, and they don't think it's ever going to go away because Bitcoin is Bitcoin. It's been around the longest. It's got the most backing to it. It's been taken over. It's taken over and been the asset in cryptocurrency, and it's in people's minds more secure than a lot of others in investing into altcoins. Wrapped Bitcoin, being able to take an asset and wrapping it into your native chain like Ethereum does on the ERC20 network, people use those to trade. So I'll give you an example. So for Feed Every Gorilla on our exchange at fegex.com, you can go in there and you can take wrap Bitcoin, because we run on the Ethereum network. And this just shows you how people are scaling out, right? So you can take wrap Bitcoin and you can wrap it into our native Feg wrap, and then you can base pair that against any token that you want to trade on our exchange. And so now you're trading Bitcoin, but in a wrapped form. And anybody holding that Bitcoin is going any of that FBTC or FBTCB, if it's on the BEP20 version, because you can also do that because we're multi-chain, you'll be able to hold that token, that FRAP BTC, and earn passive rewards as people exchange back and forth from the exchange. So that, I think, is another example of how people's idea and perception of Bitcoin and its strength has really driven Bitcoin onto these other platforms. And I think that without scaling and without these other blockchains, we may see a lot less dominance in Bitcoin in itself, just because of it hasn't been able to scale itself And so these were measures that people took in order to make these functionalities happen. And so we're looking at kind of a you scratch your back, I scratch mine situation going on here with Bitcoin and the ETH blockchain in that sense. But it's definitely driving volume for both. And I think that right now, with people starting to recognize globally cryptocurrency and it becoming more of an accepted ideology for currency, for an exchange, a monetary exchange of value, it's really benefiting the overall market positively. So of course I'll stand behind that, and I support that for right now. And I am curious to see what direction it takes us in, though, or what direction we as the market decides to go.
I'm looking at a CoinDesk article right now from June of 2021, and it discusses that 1% of the Bitcoin supply is now wrapped on Ethereum. Quote, the number of Bitcoins locked on the Ethereum blockchain via wrapper Bitcoin WBTC, which is a decentralized finance protocol leveraged to convert BTC to ERC20 tokens, has increased to a record 189,000 Bitcoin, according to Arcane Research's weekly note published on Tuesday. So, I mean, that's a 1% of Bitcoin in June 2021. I could certainly see that increasing over time. So my next question to you revolves around, you mentioned nation states adopting Bitcoin. Have you been keeping an eye on El Salvador, and what is your opinion of that? What are the implications for DeFi? I think one thing that the Bitcoin DeFi industry, however nascent it may be, is finding that they might have an inroad there to introduce DeFi apps. Could you speak a little bit to Bitcoin in El Salvador, if it's something you've been keeping an eye on?
Yeah, I haven't kept a tremendous eye on it. I know that their adoption has been coming. We've been in the latter parts of rolling out our fully functional decentralized exchange. So I've been putting a lot of hours into that. But I do know that they've been pushing for adoption. And we've seen a lot of movement in Bitcoin the past several days, in fact. And I think in regards to DeFi and Bitcoin, we're looking at it really just enhances the dominance of Bitcoin. And I think that, like I mentioned earlier, them scaling out, it's really gonna push a lot of people to build around the Bitcoin environment, the Bitcoin blockchain, because they're gonna see a lot of buying pressure for Bitcoin, a lot of movement as it gets adopted. Now, scalability and things and smart contract use have been issues for Bitcoin in the past, and how fast you can transact on it. So the next question is, how fast will they be able to build out around it? Will they be able to scale? What are the transaction fees going to look like? Is it going to make sense to utilize Bitcoin as a currency here? Or is that going to be held by these governments maybe as more of a store of value, and they branch off and they use maybe an altcoin as a medium of exchange? Or do they use stable coins as a medium of exchange? And then you ask yourself, well, stable coins, a lot of them are centralized. So how does that really bring decentralization to us if we are using a centralized asset as a medium of exchange for this token? And what's the longevity there as we try to go decentralized completely? So there's a lot of things involved in that. So I mean, I'm happy to see it happening, and I definitely support it, because I think that the more adoption that we get, regardless of my personal opinions on Bitcoin, I think that it's just going to bring more awareness, and with that, it'll bring people to the space, and the people to the space will bring more awareness for decentralized finance and the adoption thereof. And hopefully we can keep Bitcoin as decentralized as possible. With there's a lot of centralization with Bitcoin, in the sense that a lot of it is held on centralized exchanges. So it goes back to control. How can they control these assets? Where is El Salvador holding their Bitcoin? I hope it's not on Coinbase, or it's not on Binance, where they limit the ability to withdraw often. There's different things that you have to take into consideration. So overall, I support it. I think that it's going to do great for the awareness, and I'm curious to see where the longevity of this goes. I'll never claim to be an expert on Bitcoin and adoption in foreign countries, but I definitely am curious to see where it goes, and I will definitely keep an eye on it and do some more research on it for the next time you and I talk. I think these will become more consistent, and we'll definitely have a great discussion on that next time we roll in here.
So for those who maybe are still unsure why they would look into DeFi or adopt DeFi, why does the world need DeFi?
Why does the world need DeFi as a whole? So the world needs DeFi as a whole because you're looking at, there's so much, we talked about the corruption in the space, right? We talked about how you're looking at all these different means of finance that are being controlled by the large government and central entities. And we talked about, credit cards having tremendous fees and personal loans having tremendous fees. Um, and people that live in foreign countries that come to the United States as an American, I'll say there's a lot of people that come here to work. And I grew up on the southern border in Texas on the U.S.-Mexico border, and I'll say that I've seen a tremendous amount of people coming to the United States to work and attempting to send money back home, and they're not making large amounts of money. And so when they come to the United States and they want to send that money back home, a lot of that is getting taken away from them in fees. And so you're looking at not only them prospering as working in the United States or as Americans, their focus is heavily on their focus is heavily on supporting those that are back in their native country, and they're working towards improving their lives as well as theirs, and to chip away at the hard work that they tend to do, which a lot of it on the southern border tends to be labor work, and my father was a migrant worker and picked fruit in the field, and we sent money back to our family in Mexico, and it's things like this. You're chipping away at what little money they're able to make, and it really inhibits the people from prospering. And so I think this is just back to the centralization of it. You're looking at an industry that makes its money off of you just being able to use what you've earned, and they're making money off of that. And so the world needs decentralized finance, because you and I should be able to have a discussion and say, hey, I need to borrow $5, and it shouldn't cost me $15 to send that $5 to you. So you can do great you can do a lot of things decentralizing, where you're not stuck having somebody who's doing a payment processing charging you a tremendous amount of money just to process that transaction and getting rich off of everyday living.
Somebody asked me, like, why do we need DeFi? Why would I need DeFi? I think I would say that the financial institutions, they do not work for you, that their partnerships with government have allowed their shareholders and stakeholders to essentially become like a breakaway class above and beyond the regular norms of society and mores of society and traditions of society. And that DeFi doesn't enrich these middlemen, essentially, which is what they are. And that would kind of be my main pitch. So I'm curious, one of the projects you're most affiliated with is the FEG token. Could you kind of speak to FEG token, especially you mentioned earlier about wrapped Bitcoin on it? I guess FBTC or FBTCB you mentioned. Could you elaborate a little bit on those, and then also the platform in general?
Absolutely. So we created a multi-chain decentralized exchange called Feed Every Gorilla, and it's found at fegex.com, fegex.com. You can trade on the Ethereum and the Binance Smart Chain on there. We just recently opened up our project this week to with an auto deployer, so that tokens can list their tokens on our exchange. And we've got about over 60 some odd tokens listed within the first couple of days. We are also launching out a new platform called Smart DeFi, which is combating what we've seen a lot of in the decentralized finance space, which is, a lot of hesitation comes from the fact that a lot of things have been scams, right? And this holds true in DeFi. There's a lot of people trying to take advantage, and this goes back to what I was talking about earlier when I said that there's a dogfight between us all trying to get a piece of the pie. And it's, it goes against DeFi, what these people are doing. And so what our project is doing is that we've created a launch pad that people can bring and take their tokens to, and they can actually utilize that platform without having to create a smart contract. It creates a trustless contract where the token holds all of its own liquidity. The token is its own decentralized exchange. And so the transferring back and forth is within the token. We've blocked it from being hosted on third-party exchanges so that it can't be exploited with flash loans or any of these, non-whitelist only platforms that have seen exploit. A lot of these issues have been seen on several exchanges. I won't name drop out of respect for them, but there's been numerous platforms that have seen these kind of issues, even as of late. And what we've done is we created that platform that can launch out. It's completely trustless. It's safe. they'll be able to take that token, and what it is that's what we've innovated what a cryptocurrency can be. So right now you're trading on a spot price, right? What is the value of this token as you trade as it trades back and forth? We launched a new token called ROX, ROX, that is the first of the smart DeFi tokens. It has a minimum value for this token. So you're able to actually transact back and forth. As it transacts back and forth, it moves a certain percentage of the transaction fee into an asset-backed liquidity pool. So I'll give you an example. The asset-backed liquidity pool for the baseline of our Binance side is 1.6 BNB per token. And that's only gone up since the launch of the token. On the Ethereum side, the baseline value is 0.095 ETH, and that only goes up as it transacts back and forth. So what does that mean for the everyday consumer? That means that as you hold that token and as other people transact with it, it's earning a minimum value. So as a store of value, this token is completely decentralized. Nobody owns it. The contract owns itself. It cannot be traded outside on third party. And it's always maintaining a minimum value. And it's actually growing. So what you can do is you can take that token to our exchange, you can load the token and go to the smart tools section, and you can actually burn that token for its base value. So it always maintains that minimum value. What we've done is we built out on that to a smart lending where you can actually take your token and say, I have one ROX token. I just talked to you about the value. Let's say I want to do, I need a loan for I need a 30-day loan for a couple $100. I can take my one ROX token right now to the exchange and say, I need 1.6 BNB right now so I can pay some bills, because I don't want to sell this token because I know the value of it's going to go up, but I need a couple $100. So I can lend that to, I can take that loan out against my token as collateral. And if I want to extend that, it'll burn 0.1% of the collateral and I can extend the loan. But because that loan, that backing is completely collateralized, because it's the base value of that token that it's earned in the asset backing has earned from transactions back and forth, buying and selling, that token amount, if it gets lost, then we just burn the token. If they don't pay back that amount, then we burn the token. It gets out of circulating supply. And so it's deflationary in that concept. So, we're really trying to change the space. We're trying to increase safety in the space. We can go back to Bitcoin and say how I mentioned FBTC or FBTCB. If we have a reward system that anytime somebody transacts on the exchange, that if you hold the FRAP version of that base pair, like for example, FBTCB, if I had an RTR token, which is my crypto handle, RTR. So if I did an RTR token versus paired against FBTC, anytime somebody bought or sold, there's going to be a 1% conversion fee, and that 1% conversion fee goes to the holders of that FBTC. I don't want to get too in depth, but this is just an example of how we've utilized the exchange platform, which is completely decentralized. There's no owner, there's no CEO. We have a development team that works on it, but it's completely decentralized, and it gives power back to the people, the consumer. You can take your FEG tokens and you can earn reflections on those tokens. So you're getting passive tokens for everybody transacting. So you're earning money that way. You can put those tokens into the staking pool and earn transactions for multiple tokens on the exchange that are base paired to several tokens. So it allows you to take your money, in FEG tokens or in any FRAP token, and hold that in your wallet and earn passive income based off the utilization of that exchange. How many banks can you go into and put your money in, and they tell you that every month you're going to earn an APY of 10% or above because you're just holding your money in that bank, or you're going to receive a couple of dollars, or a couple of cents every time somebody transacts, that is a holder from that bank. This really gives people the ability to earn passive income from the system itself, and not the bank earning that money. You know what I'm saying? It's taking away from the bank earning on transaction fees, and it's giving those transaction fees to people. And that's the beautiful part of DeFi, is that it can be created to where it benefits everybody as a whole, and not just the select few, like you explained in your example of, when you explained what your ideology of DeFi was, and or centralization of these banks and how they've created this separate class.
If we're not careful, we're going to end up paying 10% for them to keep our money. And we already see negative interest rates in countries like Switzerland, for example. In fact, I was speaking with Mike Hearn, who is an original Bitcoin developer, who cited a lack of governance as the reason why Bitcoin would not scale over time and left the project, joined R3. He has recently lamented to me about how he's experiencing negative interest rates in Europe. Any other comments, RTR Crypto?
No, I'll just on a closing note, I just say it was a pleasure speaking with you. I think that you and I have very similar ideologies when it comes to finance and cryptocurrency. And I'd love to select some topics that you and I can discuss later in the future, and maybe deep dive some more into what FEG and FEG exchanges, and some NFTs that we've been doing with FOMO Labs. We're developing NFTs in a game as well, so a play to earn game on another note. So that's going to be coming out in the next few months, and we're really excited to expand out. We've seen, for example, I have some friends in the Philippines that during the pandemic they played these decentralized games to earn a living, to pay their bills, and to feed themselves and their families. And so we're definitely going to build these things out that allows users all the abilities that we can in order to earn a passive income. And I think it's a beautiful thing. I'm very passionate about it. I can see that you're very passionate about taking power away from centralized entities. And so I think we'll get along. We'll get along gloriously. And like I said, I appreciate you having me. It was a pleasure.
Pleasure is all mine, RTR. Thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you everyone for listening.